So, fearful avoidants have a really common theme of pulling away and ignoring people or situations or relationships, largely because of guilt. And if you're on the receiving end of that, it can definitely be very confusing. So, in this video, I'll shed some light on it. But it's also really painful and challenging for the fearful avoidant going through it, who often doesn't have context for like why they're pulling away, why they shut down, what's really going on behind the scenes. And as with pretty much anything else, in order to move through a limiting pattern or behavior, it's so valuable to first understand it, get what's going on, and dig into it. So, in this video, for the sake of the individual going through this and the person on the receiving end of it, I just really wanted to shed some light to help you understand. And at the end, I'll share a little bit about what you can do if you are the FA, but also what you can do and what boundaries you should show up with if you're on the receiving end of this from an FA loved one. First and foremost, fearful avoidants tend to experience guilt very easily and frequently. This is largely because fearful avoidants are often enmeshed and they tend to have this really kind of lethal combination of putting very high expectations on themselves to take care of other people's feelings, combined with a really big core wound of I am bad. And on top of that, they're very much driven to show up in their relationships from a fear of being unworthy or not enough in some way. And so they have all this pressure, all this expectation. And that also sort of seasoned in the mix there is that they don't often know how to express their own needs because there's this deep subconscious assumption that their needs won't be met by other people, that it's sort of like they meet other people's needs and then it's up to them to meet their own needs. And so this kind of creates a perfect storm for the fearful avoidant where they can be afraid of, not showing up as enough. They put all this pressure, then they can get burnt out because of all this pressure. And then they don't know how to talk about a need or talk about a boundary or bring things into harmony to express, hey, look, I'm not having needs met and I'm really trying really hard over here and I need something as well from you. So, what often happens is over time, these patterns kind of build up. And eventually, the fearful avoidant may reach this precipice and then just pull away altogether and sort of assume that the relationship is just not working and thus is over. And what's so interesting is after working with literally hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of fearful avoidance in my client practice over the years, not even including like workshops or doing stuff at PDS, um, I would see that when a fearful avoidant learned they can actually express their needs, their relationships would change really dramatically. And honestly, in a really nice way. Like they would learn, oh, people actually do want to meet my needs. I get less burnt out. I can set a boundary if I need time on my own to just recharge. And people will respect it and they'll hear me. But when they don't know this, what often takes place is they have all this buildup of like emotion, frustration, exhaustion, and then they pull away and they just end a relationship. And this can be friendships, family relationships, romantic relationships. And they don't end the relationship so much out of like anger, although of course this can happen, but this is in this case specifically with the guilt issue, it's usually not that. It's that they feel burnt out and they just don't feel like they can keep investing in these one-way relationships that if you're on the receiving end of that, it's not your fault, right? It's that they're not communicating about this. And it's like a co-creation of the event or dynamic, right? And so they will then like pull away, feel guilty about how they pulled away, and then they'll just avoid altogether. Even if they intended only to pull away for a little bit, sometimes like enough time pass and they just have this avoidance strategy where it's like, I don't want to reapproach a situation. I don't want to reapproach the person. I don't want to have to explain myself because I don't want to have to feel like I have to explain myself to somebody who was already just participating in a one-way relationship that wasn't really great for me anyways. And it adds this like extra barrier, and then they also, because they've got these big core wounds of feeling like I am bad and I am unworthy, they really fear somebody giving them a hard time or guilting them because it's just like too much guilt. And so it creates this dynamic of fearful avoidance really struggling, and then often going through these patterns of like pulling away altogether and having a hard time reconnecting or reintroducing. And so, if you are the fearful avoidant, some big things to work on, and then I'll go into what to work on if you're the on the receiving end of it. If you are the FA, you want to start by doing a guilt audit. You want to be able to recognize like how much guilt there is in your life and just recognizing consciously like how often you guilt yourself and for things that are often not yours to be guilted for. So sometimes it's like guilting yourself for not fixing somebody or changing something for somebody or doing something for everybody. It can be these like expectations that are creating the guilt, and doing some reconditioning around those core wounds. I am bad, and I am unworthy. And really honing in on some of that stuff can create a lot of relief and help you stop guilting yourself so often. And then learning how to have healthy boundaries and communicate your needs in healthy ways. And all of this is actually in our reprogramming guilt and shame course. You can check out for free for 7 days using the link down below in the description box. And that will really help you to like move through these different pain points around guilt and just feel like you can have these healthy boundaries and talk out things in relationship to your needs. So you have these two-way relationships and you don't end up falling into these one-way relationship type patterns because you're really good at reading other people and being hyper vigilant and reading between the lines, but others aren't doing that with you. And so it's like, oh, you can be there for them, but it's not feeling like it's reciprocated. And then also, if you're on the receiving end of this, it's equally hard, right? It's so difficult because you don't meet, like you probably are doing your absolute best to be with the person and show up for the person. If the person's not expressing their needs to you, you can't know any better, right? You're not supposed to be a mind reader. And so sometimes you can feel really connected to this person, and they kind of poof, like out of nowhere, kind of disappear. And it's so important that you have healthy boundaries. And if the fearful avoidant does reemerge, have a conversation and say, look, I don't know what caused you to have to pull away, but I know that that's you communicating with your actions instead of your words. And I really need you to communicate what you need from me through your words so I can better understand, so I can better consider you, so we can have a healthy relationship. And it's also not appropriate for you to do that going forward in the future because it's really hurtful to be on the receiving end of. And I need us to be able to talk things out, hash things out together, and continue to move the needle. And, if you have a conversation, have a dialogue, and have those boundaries as well, and you address those key points and encourage your FA loved one to talk stuff out, communicate their needs to you, that's how you're going to see transformation long term. So I hope this makes sense. I thought it was really worth addressing because I see this cycle a lot, both for fearful avoidance and people on the receiving end of fearful avoidance in relationships. Let me know any other questions you have in the comments down below. And thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel if you're enjoying the content here. And I will see you in future videos.